As we know, Money Heist, a Korean version, will be called Joint Economic Area. This may indicate that the story is more based on the lives of the officers rather than the robbers. Of course, it does not mean that they will not present interesting stories with those who are going to commit the robbery, only that this version could give much importance to the officers. As for example, the story of the Inspector Raquel Morillo in the Spanish version that now will be called Jongieui Jib. We know that the Spanish version did not allow us to know in depth the story of all the robbers, and fans were left wanting to know a little more about the characters. For example, if we start with Inspector Morillo, we know that although we have information about her life, since she is such a criticized character, it may be that in this remake they will do a slightly different story with her. There is a theory that indicates that the series may be based heavily on this character and that the same will have a much more important role. That's why today I'm going to talk about a fan theory that Jongieui Jib might be the new professor at the end of the series. But first, remember to subscribe to this channel and activate the notification bell to be among the first to see our content. We know that in the Spanish series the Inspector Raquel fell madly in love with the professor no matter what, and we could see how their relationship was developing. But what if suddenly in this version things change a bit and she doesn't really fall in love with the professor and just makes him believe that she does so she can keep the money? Yes, it might sound a little crazy, but it is said that this new version will have some changes and will not be an exact copy of the original. We can think this because Jeon Jong-seo commented that the characters of this new version of Korea would be very different from those of Spain and did not have much resemblance. With this we can draw many conclusions. But the idea of the inspector taking a more important role would give an unexpected twist to the series. We know that according to the most recent trailer, we could see the professor in his office planning his plan for the heist while looking at different cultural masks from Korea. What is very curious is that the professor, instead of taking the Yangban mask, which is the one that will be used in this remake, he took the mask of Salvador Dali. This could mean many things, among them that he will use very similar methods for the heist, or maybe he will only use the Spanish heist as a reference, because his plan will be much better. We know that Korean series are known for having the best stories and for being very dramatic and producing very strong emotions in every scene. Given that it is the film culture of that country, we understand that the series has a great chance to hook with something that really impacts. Because although it is a remake, it will not necessarily be the same, so it will have its unique details. Something that we could think of that would make a big impact on the fans would be the deaths of different characters. For example, as I mentioned, it could be that Jongieui Jib has a very interesting story to tell and that she deceives everyone with her supposed love for the professor. It may be that the story becomes even more dramatic. And this version does not just focus on the reason why the professor is going to commit the heist, but includes the story of why Jongieui Jib is in love with the professor. We know that the professor's story indicates that when he was a child he was sick, and his dad was apparently not in a good financial situation and decided to rob a bank. Unfortunately, the professor's dad was caught in the act and killed for the robbery he committed. But of course, Sergio's dad not only wanted to rob a small bank, but had concocted a plan to break into the Royal Mint and print his own money, so that technically he wouldn't rob anyone and wouldn't hurt anyone. If we focus on what the professor's childhood was like, where his mother died of a degenerative disease called Helmer's myopathy, and his father robs a bank to improve his family's situation and then is murdered. Well, we can see that it is a very sad story that perhaps teaches us that not always the acts seen as bad in society are truly bad, but it will depend on the side in which you look at them. But what if in this Korean adaptation, besides giving importance to the professor's story, they give more importance to Jongieui Jib's story, but in a different way, and if they turn the inspector's story into a sadder story than that of the professor? We know that in the Spanish series, Inspector Raquel had escaped from an abusive marriage to her husband, a prominent police forensic examiner who then began a relationship with her sister. At the time she reported him for the abuse and received a restraining order against him, but few in the police force believed her. Raquel Morillo lives with her mother and her young daughter. The inspector was going through a difficult time because she was afraid of losing custody of her daughter, and at the same time she had to take care of her mother who suffers from Alzheimer's disease. When we see this story, it is also sad and very complicated. Now, many have criticized the role of Inspector Morillo in the Spanish series, although we are not going to give details of that. The truth is that the character of the inspector was not a character that many loved, as many indicate that she made many mistakes and that she was only a distraction for the professor. Based on that, it may be that in this new version they will make Seon Woo-jin look like a totally different person from the original version. Maybe they will make this character into a more intelligent and cunning one, and maybe they can create an even more tragic story that is related to the professor's childhood story. Perhaps this is done to give a unique and different style to the Korean remake. Something that is not uncommon in Korean series, as it is customary for the endings of these series to be shocking and have a message or life teaching. Part of the theory indicates that Seon Woo-jin has a crossover story with the professor. The theory says that Woo-jin's mother was at the time when the professor's dad was in the bank robbing. At that very moment of the robbery, Woo-jin's mother suffers a heart attack because of the fright she went through at that moment. Because of that, the inspector's mother dies, and she as a daughter promises that in the future she will do justice for what happened, and that is why she becomes a police officer. Then upon learning about the robbery that was happening in her country, she investigated and realized that the professor is the son of the person who robbed the bank that day her mother died of a heart attack. Upon learning this, she enters the investigation in order to get to the professor. She then establishes a relationship with him and pretends to be in love. At the end of the series, she steals the money the professor got with his plan and reveals to him why she did it. This whole story is done in the series to teach that revenge always brings consequences, and that what the professor did could be seen as heroic, but also what the inspector did could be seen in the same way. Teaching that many negative behaviors pointed out by society are really very relative. And that everything will always depend on which side you look at it, and that the meaning of something wrong loses its validity. Although of course everything mentioned above is a theory, it is nothing confirmed, but it is a bit of a crazy idea that could make the series much more interesting. In addition to this theory, there has been much talk that there may be changes in the deaths of the characters. We know that in the Spanish version the most surprising deaths were those of Berlin, Nairobi, and Tokyo. Maybe in this Korean remake other different characters will die. Who knows if in this version the professor will die, something that would be very shocking for everyone, or just characters that we consider not so important will die. What is certain is that this series, even though it is a remake, will bring something different that will remind us that Korean series always have something shocking and unexpected. What do you think about this theory about Seon Woo-jin? Leave your comment here. If you liked this video, leave your like and share it with your friends.